Then Act 1, Scene 2 begins with Lord Capulet talking to Paris, who is another nobleman, and Paris wants to marry Lord Capulet's daughter, Juliet. And Lord Capulet talks about Juliet being a bit too young, so we find out that she's nearly 13, which again seems quite shocking to a modern audience. But the play is set in medieval Verona, which was a time when women were married off very young. Life expectancy was shorter as well, but essentially the start of puberty was considered adulthood. So again, it sounds shocking to us, but it wouldn't have seemed so to an Elizabethan audience. So Lord Capulet does say that she's a little bit young, and he also wants Paris to woo Juliet, to get her heart, to make her fall in love with him. And he says, "Her will to my consent is but a part." So he's saying that that Paris has to get Juliet to agree, and that he's saying that he's not going to just order Juliet to marry Paris, which obviously contrasts with later on in the play when he does order Juliet to marry Paris, and we've got this kind of sense of building tension here again, because from the prologue we know that Romeo and Juliet are going to fall in love with each other, and yet here is her father planning her marriage. So it shows that the kind of the beginnings of that tension, that conflict. And then we have Romeo talking to his friends Benvolio and Mercutio, and they want him to go to the Feast of the Capulets, which they found out about by accident because a servant asked them to read a list of people invited to the feast. And because Rosaline is going to be there, Romeo decides to go. His friends want him to go because they think that if he sees other beauties, women more beautiful than Rosaline, then he'll forget about Rosaline. And Romeo says, "No such light to be shown, but to rejoice in splendour of mine own." So he says that he'll go, but only to rejoice in the splendour of Rosaline, because he doesn't believe that there could be anyone more beautiful than Rosaline, which, again, we know that he's going to fall in love with Juliet. So it's showing that he's kind of blind to this change that's about to come, and again possibly emphasising that he's quite impulsive, that he's going to fall in love very quickly, which arguably could make you question whether it is really true love, but I think again showing that true love is that requited love that Juliet and he share or will share. Then we've got scene 3, which is Juliet and her mother and her nurse, and we see that there's a strong relationship, a strong bond between Juliet and her nurse. Her nurse knows a lot about her, whereas her mother doesn't. Her mother doesn't even remember how old she is, whereas the nurse knows it very specifically. And Juliet's mother tells her about Paris, and basically tells her to love him. And Juliet says, "I'll look to like, if looking liking move." So she's very cautious at this stage, and she also talks about only going as far as her parents give her consent. So she's a very obedient, dutiful daughter, and very cautious about the idea of love. So she says, "Look to like," when she's asked if she can love Paris.